Detour from Doom is a defense against an attack entering our quadrant 2 or 3. The word Doom is a code word for a kick, which is what the technique is typically taught as a defense against. The word Detour signifies our evasive maneuver from the kick. Let's take a look. So what happened there? Well, we begin open stance in this technique, and the opponent is executing a roundhouse kick, in this case to my quadrant 3. So I immediately moved up the circle into a cat stance. Go ahead and relax for a minute. I moved up the circle, bringing my left foot right behind my right heel into a cat stance facing 10:30 or 11 o'clock. At the same time, I utilized a universal block. That's a left downward block and a right inward block. But rather than delivering the inward block in this kind of sweeping fashion, from my on-guard position, I punched it out, much like a hammer fist, really thinking about striking the opponent's arm if he were to attack or follow up with his hand. Likewise, with the downward block, it's very much a strike to the opponent's leg, so thinking of these more as hammer fists. And notice that I'm not trying all that hard to keep my elbows touching each other. I'm allowing some space here for comfort and mobility, striking the opponent's limbs. So let's see that one more time. Striking just like that. That was perfect. Now immediately, I'm going to execute a front kick to the opponent's groin. He's going to stagger and cover his groin. From here, you saw me plant down into a neutral bow with a pinning check as I executed a vertical punch to the opponent's solar plexus. Now, stay right there. It's important when you're executing this punch, your fist is aligned vertically, but allow your elbow to come out away from the body as you execute that punch. So my humerus here is at a 45-degree angle from my rib cage. And you can see here it creates a little bit of a kink. And you might say that looks a little awkward. Why not keep the elbow down? But that also creates a kink here in the wrist and the elbow. So you're going to have this sort of zigzag pattern no matter the angle of the elbow. Keeping the elbow out keeps the shoulder in a better alignment, so you won't experience any shoulder impingement. It also incorporates the pectoral muscle, which will add tremendous power to the punch. And you might say, well, why not then use a 45-degree punch? Why not straighten the wrist this way? But a couple reasons for that. One, you can see that the angle of the punch is not straight into the opponent. So by turning my fist this way, I can attack the target's head on. And this wrist alignment is actually much safer. You can see there's a lot of margin for error here upon impact. If my wrist were to wiggle a little bit, I'm not going to sprain my wrist. But if I were to fire a horizontal punch or a 45-degree punch and I'm trying to keep this perfectly flat, if I have any sort of wiggle or bend in my wrist, that's going to be a sprained wrist. So this vertical punch with the elbow out, just kind of think that you've got a tennis ball up there. Don't squeeze it, but just imagine you've got room enough for a tennis ball under your armpit. Tremendous power and very safe on the wrist. So after that vertical punch, you saw me reach behind the opponent's neck and bend him over for a downward hammer fist to the back of the neck. From there, it was a single cover, followed by a rear crossover back kick before completing my cover up. What's important about this move is that although it's typically taught as defense against a roundhouse kick, as we just saw, it really works for any attack entering your quadrant 2 or 3. And this is great because in reality, I won't be able to predict or dictate how the opponent is attacking me. So let's say we're in the same situation here, left neutral bows, and it happens that he ends up firing a right step through punch, right? Even without my hands, go ahead and do that one more time. I'm getting out of the way if he punches where I was. Go ahead and reset. What if he tracks me? What if he follows my movement? Right? I can still get on the inside of that arm and strike one more time. Yep, just like that. Now, in a moment ago, we ended up colliding, right? He punched my arm, which is fine, better than my face, right? So it's not gonna be clean always. As long as I'm moving out of the way and redirecting, striking his limb. This is really the first target that presents itself, and we shouldn't understate the importance of this. Striking his arm, right? If he kicks, striking that leg is really important. What now if he happens to be in a left neutral bow, sorry, right neutral bow, and he fires a left step through front kick? Same thing, right? I'm getting offline, striking that leg. Now in this case, I don't have such a clear view of his center line. So this front kick can instead go to his floating ribs. And I can pin, this time perhaps just one arm instead of both, before I execute my punch. Now, if his body, like his solar plexus or his ribs, are not as clearly available, I may change the target here and strike to the head, to the temple. The hook behind the head, I may not up the circle as far because I'm already kind of up the circle relative to his center line, but I'll nevertheless pull him over for a hammer fist. Thank you. So you can see whether you're on the outside of his limb or the inside of his limb, whether you have a clear view of his center line or not, this technique works incredibly well. Let's say now that he was back in the left neutral, and it ends up being a boxer style punch. He's going to push drag and pivot, but not step through. So I have my strike still, and again, I have more of a view of his floating rib, so I can kick there, pin, and continue on. So, very versatile technique to defend quadrants 2 and 3. The opponent's in a left neutral. I am in a right neutral, so we're open stance, and I'm using this on guard position. It's not our typical open hand position that we use in our empty-handed defenses against kicks and punches or club attacks. But you can see here that I've got my back rounded, my elbows are touching, and I've got what are essentially 2 outward hooking parries, or what could be called a butterfly parry. And so we're utilizing this as a meat shield because it's too difficult to anticipate and karate block or parry any sort of attack the opponent might do. In a controlled training environment, we can do drills and parries and look really fancy, but in real life, if the opponent is a maniac stabbing us in all sorts of ways, it's really not a matter of can we stop him. The only thing that we might really have a say in is where do we allow ourselves to get stabbed. And so here, I'm using my arms as essentially a meat shield. So as he steps through, I move up the circle into a cat stance. Even if he tracks me, go ahead and track me and put the knife into my arm. Yeah, exactly. Better my arm than my chest or my neck. From here, I immediately execute a front snap kick to the groin, which should soften him up and make him stagger away. Now, at this point, the safest, smartest thing to do might be to continue kicking as hard and as fast as you can. Up into the face, into the ribs, into the groin, side kicks to the knee, right? So you really want to think twice before you start engaging and wrestling with the knife, or for the knife, because you can see here, what do I have to do? I have to expose myself. If at this last moment he lunges at me again with the knife, right, and I miscalculate, I've got a big opening here. If I had left my arms where they were, I at least would have suffered only a stab here to my arm. So ideally, practically, your technique might just be moving out of the way up the circle and then firing a series of kicks. Now let's take a look at Detour from Doom as a defense against a club attack. So we'll start here, open stance with the opponent, and he's stepping through just like we saw before with some possible empty-handed strikes, but now we'll instead consider the club. And this is a great example of where it may not be ideal to use Detour from Doom as your very first response. And he steps in with a club attack, and I were to move up the circle, I'm still within the strike path of the stick. So instead, I may choose to do thrusting salute on the opposite side, something like this. Maybe I move back and a little up the circle, and I can replacement front kick to close that distance. Now we're in the realm of Detour from Doom here because I'm striking with my lead leg. So let's see that one more time. So maybe I move back and I kick. You can see here I've shifted my angle to get towards the center line. That kick to the groin should hopefully cause both arms to drop, and I can pin and punch and hammer fist just like we saw before. Thank you. Be sure to practice with a variety of weapon lengths when you're using this as a defense against a club attack. So let's have, just for variety's sake, let's have the stick in the opponent's left hand. Yep. And let's say he's stepping through with his swing. I may not necessarily want to do my universal block because I don't want my hands to get hit, but as he swings, I'm going to push right straight back. And now here may be my opportunity to use a replacement front kick to his ribs, which should cause him to drop. And from there, I can pin his arm and punch, just like we saw before. Hammer fist and back kick. So there you have it for Detour from Doom.